Well, we might as well get this started. Got people waiting already. That's good. That's a good sign. Jorge. How do you say that? Jorge? He can't wait. Adam's ready to go. I just need to put the link in the thing here before we really can. Oh, 7-Eleven free Slurpee day. What? That's amazing. It's too bad I'm on a zero sugar kick right now. That's a shame. Forgot our little banner. Let's pop that sucker in. There we go. Like, share, subscribe, buy a coffee if you're so inclined. Here, we're gonna put this in the thing right here. How is everybody doing today? I'm doing good for the most part. Still looking for jobs every day. Soul-crushing day jobs. Hopefully something that I really, truly love doing. But I'm searching. Got to keep searching. Okay, those are posted. Okay. That's looking good to me. All right. The glasses need a little polishing. Actually, let's do that. You know what I forgot to get? I forgot to get my seltzer. Would it be rude of me if I ran and got a seltzer from the other room? Would you guys hold that against me? I think I hope not. Here, take a look at this framed Misfits poster. I'll literally be right back. Oh, gracious me. LAST. It's a cool poster, right? My friend Rich got that for me. Gave that to me, I should say. You can never see it because it's blocked by my body. But it's there, always behind me. Tonight's episode has a few sponsors. Hold on. Yes. So tonight's episode has a few sponsors. Sponsor number 1 tonight, Bubbly. White peach ginger bubbly. Yeah, baby. You don't have to punish your liver to stay lubricated. You can drink a beautiful carbonated seltzery beverage. And if I'm going to do that, I might as well do it out of my special cup from Rena's Paw Pad. Yeah, baby. Rena's Paw Pad is here for all your pets will always be comforted and cuddled by my friend Rena. She sent me this mug and this awesome t-shirt. And so I just wanted to plug it on the show. Check her out on Facebook. Look, I'm going to pour some of my seltzer. Ooh, there we go. Right there into the mug. Good stuff. So go check out Rena's Paw Pad on Facebook. She loves Drake. That's her big thing. Cheers, Mr. Felipe. Cheers to you. That's right. Jeffrey Murdergram. What's up, Oni? How you doing? Feel like I haven't seen you in forever. A lot of people. Hey, Rue Morg, what's up, buddy? Yes. We got the gang in town. Wow. So a lot of people, I want to apologize to all of you guys out there. Yo, Mr. Bloodshed, how are you, sir? I want to apologize. I've been getting a lot of backlash because I, on rare occasion, will like nibble on something, it's very hard. Imagine doing these shows for 2 hours to 3 hours to 5 hours long and not eating anything. So every once in a while, I'm like, oh yeah, I'll take a little nibble. I didn't realize that there is a mute function on here. And so sometimes when I play back audio, I don't mute. See, I was just muted. I did that on purpose. I can mute myself. And so I felt horribly embarrassed when I uploaded some video recently. It was a clip from another show. It was Henry Rollins talking about his love from 12 Hits from Hell. And man, people laid into me, rightfully so. I deserved it. I deserved everything that was coming to me. I'm sorry. If I'm going to munch on something, I'm going to mute myself. I've already started doing that a little bit. I just discovered this mute feature not too long ago. So I was pretty embarrassed. Will the show be as short as Brian's stint behind the kit? No, man. No, well, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I started a little bit early. It's 9:30 on the dot, and we're already 6 minutes in. So what does that say about that? Hold on. I should share the, it's fine. I don't care. I don't really care. I don't really care. So, yeah. So I just wanted to say I'm sorry about all that. I'm going to give a quick update about They Came from Lodi, a documentary picture coming soon directly to your screen. Dun, 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 dun. They Came from Lodi. Yeah, so work is steady on They Came from Lodi. I'm getting there. I'm just going through hours and hours of footage. I am 2 hours deep into Ken Kayafa. That's Rocky, aka Schlock. Kenny is Jerry and Doyle's brother. I sat with Ken for Jerry and Doyle's brother for 4 hours. We did 4 hours of interviews covering everything that I could possibly think of from 77 to 83 back in December of 2010 and then again in March of 2011. And so yeah, it was like two 2-hour sessions. And I was so nervous for that interview because I wanted to be as thorough as possible. And I'm going through the tapes now and I got some gold, man. There is some gold, some tasty little tidbits. That's what we're all about. We take a tasty little tidbit and we make a meal out of it. That's what we do here on the show. And I'm happy to report that Kenny's interview is as wonderful as I remembered it being. Ken is so good at talking in succinct sound bites. There's some guys you interview, and this is no fault of their own, and I'm not it's not a knock on them, but they don't know how to, they answer a question and it turns, it's like me. Imagine me answering a question. It's the worst, right? Because all of a sudden I go on a tangent about this and blah, 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 blah. How do you edit that? How do you chop that up? How do you make that into something digestible to fit into the narrative that you're trying to write in a documentary? It sucks. But every once in a while, you get these guys that just, some of them, they do it because they have a journalistic background and they just know how to talk. That's like Jack Rabbit and Tim Somer from Noise the Show. And then you get other guys that just naturally are gifted. And Ken is one of those guys. I know Ken's been interviewed a few times, but it's not like he's like on TV all the time talking in sound bites. So his ability to talk in succinct soundbite is just phenomenal. You know what it is? It's just that Ken is a natural storyteller. He's really good at telling a story and he remembers details really well. And so it's so wonderful to look back on this material 10 years later, not even as an interviewer, as a Misfits fan, listening to someone from the inner circle talk about my favorite band. It's phenomenal. I love it. I absolutely love it. It's been so much fun. There's so much work to be done. There's 97 hours to go through, but I'm doing it slowly but surely. And if you want to support that work, feel free to. There are links to t-shirts. There's links to rentals for my films. You could buy a coffee. Any of this stuff contributes to the war effort. Why is it a war effort? It's a war effort because making a film is like a war. It really is. It's like a war. And that's like a whole other conversation I'm not going to get into right now. But it's like a war, and it ain't easy to do. Especially, there's nothing worse than nothing more soul crushing than looking for day jobs when I'm like, my real job, like my life's work, is to be doing this documentary and not to be interrupted by anything else apart from being a dad. I'm a stay-at-home dad right now. That's what I do. Take care of my little daughter and my son, and that's what I do. I make sure the dishes are clean. I make sure the house is clean for my wife when she gets home from work. I put her slippers on her shoes, on her feet. I give her a pipe in her mouth. I cook her a steak. You know, that's what I do. Sorry. All right. Enough of that. Let's segue over into the show. That was just, a little warm up talk, just to, get in the mood, get in the groove. So before we start with Brian Damage, I want to talk about another drummer for the Misfits for a brief moment, because I feel like I owe Dave Lombardo an apology, because I feel like I'm really hard on Dave Lombardo. I'm always talking about how, he plays everything too mechanical and it just doesn't work for me. And I think he plays it too straight. And I've talked to other drummers about that, and they agree. That's right, Rue. There's nothing wrong with a Mr. Mom. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for affirming that. I just feel like I've been bagging on Lombardo so much. I'm wrong, man. Here's the thing. When it comes to Lombardo's drumming for these Misfit shows, he has done such a stellar job. There's no denying that. However, he's not playing that Static Age material like Mr. Jim plays it. And Mr. Jim, I don't know if you've seen, Robbie's in the audience. I don't know if he still is, but Robbie did a show with Mr. Jim recently, and to hear Mr. Jim play those parts, those drum parts, the way they're supposed to be played, the way they're played on the record, it's just, you see that this is music where you really can't, you have to play it the way that it's recorded, man. It's just, substitutes are pale in comparison to the real deal. You know what I mean? Oni says, Dave really shines on the Earth AD tracks. Oni, that's exactly what I was about to say. That's why I wanted to apologize to Mr. Lombardo, because that's what I realized. He does shine on those tracks, dude. He totally does. And I was watching a drum cam video with Dave Lombardo, and I was just going, damn, I had Dave Lombardo pegged all wrong. When I'm wrong, I admit it. I have to. That's just the way I roll. I try to roll that way, at least. So I want to highlight that real quick. Raphael says, I could try to invite Dave Lombardo for Pizza Punk episode, maybe tomorrow night. I am having a little bit of a reunion of sorts. My old pal Tracy, TB Monstrosity, Tracy Bird from Blitzkid, is going to come on the show, and we're just going to catch up. We're going to talk about what he's doing, with Aegon and yada yada yada, and just hang out. Chew the fat, shoot the shit, that sort of thing. Maybe do some goofy sketches, reminisce. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to it. So check that out. That's tomorrow night, February 25th. I have a couple other episodes of Lodi, the Lodi streaming EVILIVE. I keep forgetting the name of the show. God damn it. It's episode 52, and I don't remember the name of my own show. I got two more cool shows lined up. One of them is going to involve Rusty Murdergram, aka Rusty Casualty, Russell Casualty. If he'll join me, I think he will. It's a cool idea. So we'll talk about that another day. Yes, folding laundry. That's true. Oni, makes sense. Earth AD is fast hardcore, similar tempo to Slayer, Rain and Blood era. Exactly, dude. The 50s swing is hard to capture, dude. That's exactly what I'm saying. And we're gonna go to the let's take it to the tape real quick. Let's take it to the tape and take a look at why I think that is. We're not going to listen to the audio. Actually, we're just going to listen to the. Let's find it. Here we go. Dave Lombardo drum cam. Boom, there he is. So here's Mr. Lombardo. This is Mr. Lombardo doing Green Hell, and you're not going to be able to hear it because I don't want to get copyright. I don't want to get in trouble with the copyright, but here. Boom. boom, 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 boom. I mean, when you hear them, and you can check out here, I'll post the video for anybody who wants to listen to the video real quick as we're discussing this. He really plays it. He plays it right to the. He's great, man. He's great. It's a great drum pattern, really, or whatever you want to call it, drum beat. But Lombardo crushes it. This was in Chicago, 2016. So this must have been right before I saw them, or maybe right after, probably right before I saw them when they're getting warmed up. Here he is. He's warming up, and he's crushing it, man. I watched this video, and I felt so stupid for criticizing him. I just think I was too rough. Let's do, if you like these metrics on the side, this is part of this cool program I have for YouTube. Really cool. Lets me see all the metrics. But yeah, I just think Lombardo is crushing it, man. He just knows what he's doing. I love those cymbals. What are those hi-hats? Drummers out there. What is he hitting? He's hitting the hi-hats, going da 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 da, or psh, 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 psh. It was a great idea. Whose idea was that? Was that Glenn, or did Robo feel that out himself? Whoever did it, it's wonderful. It's so, and you know what's interesting? It's very simple. There's simplicity and there's speed. And someone might say, Jeff, you don't know what you're talking about. There's nothing simple about what he's doing. Maybe you're right. Again, as I said, as I always do on the show, my disclaimer, I'm not a drummer. What the hell do I know? I just go by what I see. I just like the uniform of it all. He hits 1, 2, 3, and then back to the middle one. There you go. Boom. So, Mr. Lombardo, I apologize. I just want to put that out there. I retract my statement. You are so well suited to the Earth AD material and maybe some of the Walk Among Us material. Static Age, not so much. But everything else, he is the perfect man for the job in that regard. Who would be better though? Bill Stevenson. I was talking with Joe on another show. We were talking about I was talking about Film Age. I had seen Film Age, the Descendants documentary, for the first time. Phenomenal documentary. And you know, it's funny because it kind of takes a page out of some of the approach that I want for They Came From Lodi. In terms of some of the aesthetic things that they do in the film. But I just really liked Film Age, and more than anything, I was always in awe of Bill Stevenson, but I'm so much more in awe of Bill Stevenson since watching that. Especially, I don't know if any one of you caught it. He did a cover of Jealous Again. It was like some sort of quarantine cover, and Bill Stevenson can shred on guitar. Oh my God, that dude is not only an accomplished drummer. I know he's an engineer, he's an audio engineer, he does producing, but that's Robbie. That's exactly what I'm talking about. The cartoon work in that documentary, it is so awesome, and precisely the thing that, yes, well, I can't really talk about that right now, but yes, Robbie, yes. All right, guys, now that we've talked about Dave Lombardo, let's talk about our friend Brian. So, where to begin? Okay, so I've been wanting to do this episode. He was at this show. You were at which show? You were at the Chicago Riotfest show? I don't know what show you're referring to. I have been wanting to do an episode on the final Misfits show and Brian Damage Keats since the beginning of this, since I started doing this. Like, I was going to do this. This was like my plan. And the problem is I needed a piece of material that I could not, for the life of me, find. I had read an interview, the only interview with Brian about his experience with the Misfits. It was on a blog. It was from a long, long time ago. And the blog was locked. It was like a Google blog. And it was locked. And I couldn't access it. And I was like, damn, how am I going to... And I kept searching for it. It was hoping somewhere. And lo and behold, the Fiend Crypt guy, Aaron, the Fiend Crypt guy, my dude archived it. And so I was finally like, yes, that was the missing component, because I had all these other components to doing the show, but I was missing that one component. You know what I didn't get, actually? I should have gotten we need Todd Swalla's POV as well. I forgot that. I should have Todd. I'm not going to search for it now. Damn it. I knew I was missing something. See Todd Swalla interview real quick. But yeah, I was looking for that, and I couldn't find it. And I was so stoked to find it. So now I've lined up everything that I need for such an occasion. Here we go. We can use Ben's interview. Actually, that will work really well. Perfect. Now we have Todd Swalla's point of view. Now I feel like we have an all-encompassing photograph snapshot of this show, the final Misfits show. Let's paint a picture, people. We're going to paint a picture real quick. Okay, let's do this. Ready? So what's going on at this time? By the way, we're going to have to reread what Jerry Only has said about Brian Keats. Some of you were already with me when we read that, but I want to make this one episode, like a condensed one episode. I see Jason. Jason, I see you're confirming Riotfest Chicago. So in order to do that, we're going to have to be very thorough here tonight. Okay, so the time and the place, right? The time and the place. It's not Chicago 2016. The Misfits are doing shows. They've recorded Earth AD. It's 1983. The band achieves its, I guess I always think, when I think of the classic lineup of the Misfits, it's Walk Among Us. That's what I think of the Misfits. No matter what, not favorite lineups, not favorite musicians, but when I think of the seminal, like if I'm going to show you a photograph of the Misfits, it's probably going to be the guys in the classic Walk Among Us Misfits. As a matter of fact, in the documentary, and They Came from Lodi, I am sort of cataloging these like things in chapters, and one of them is When Misfits Walked Among Us, and that's what I'm thinking of for this. That era of the band is by that time they are in a full swing professional band. Jerry and Doyle are still working in Pro Edge to subsidize the band. They have a lot of overhead, and that's partially because Jerry and Doyle love to destroy instruments. But the band has a lot of overhead, and they're going out. They're going on these longer tours. They're doing strings of dates. They've crossed the country several times by this point, maybe 2 times by this point. I don't know. Someone could clarify that for me. They've crossed the country at least once, twice now. They've been out to the West Coast twice, maybe 3 times. As you can tell, I'm sort of riffing on this off the top of my head a little bit. They've put out they finally signed with Slash, or with Ruby Records under the Slash imprint. They've remixed and put out Walk Among Us. So they have an album out. They're not just a singles band anymore. They have an LP out. They're touring on that LP. All the money that is coming into the band is going back into all the money that's coming into the band is going into the band. It's going into the gas tank. It's going into all that overhead stuff, in addition to Jerry and Doyle working. Tensions are rising. I'm not going to get into all the different factors. The band is breaking up, and yet at the same time as the band is breaking up, they've already recorded a follow-up episode, and that is a follow-up album called Earth AD. We all know this. That's being put together. Mad Mark Root is putting together. He's doing this spectacular cover for Earth AD. It's pen and ink. You've seen it. We've all seen it. The dots. It took him a year. It took Mad Mark Root a year just to do that album cover. They're waiting for that album cover, and they're mixing stuff and whatever is going on. Actually, it was Glenn who would mix it later. And some point over the summer, it might have been the Santa Monica Civic Center in California. At several different points, Glenn is like, I'm done. I'm gonna leave the band. I don't want to be in the band anymore. Yada yada yada. At the same time, they're also making a deal in Europe. I forget the name of the record label. Maybe it's Aggravator Records. Someone confirm that for me. It's Aggravator Records or something. They're going to put out Earth AD as Wolf's Blood over there. It's going to be called Wolf's Blood in Europe. It's going to be called Earth AD in America. Same track listing, different album covers. It'll have the snake dick with the skull balls on from Wolf's Blood on the cover. And there are dates being set up for a tour on the support of Wolf's Blood as well. So, on one hand, you're like, oh, Glenn is leaving the band. But on the other hand, like, is he really leaving the band? Are they just going to keep limping along like this and keep going and keep pushing and doing dates? But the thing that always plagues the Misfits, always since the dawn of time, I'd say one of the things that it was probably, how like you can get mortally, okay, here we go. Oni's got it. Thank you, Oni. Aggressive Rock Production in Germany. It was a punk label from West Berlin formed in 1980 by Karl Ulrich Walterbach. Thank you, Oni. When like people can be mortally wounded, right? Like it's not a wound that kills you right on the spot. It's a wound that slowly kills you over a long period of time. And a wound that was slowly killing the Misfits over a long period of time, in my opinion, looking back on this as like a timeline, as like an archaeological dig, one of the things that was killing the Misfits was the constant like instability of their lineup. They always were replacing members. I've said this many times. The Misfits, the original 77 to 8, the Misfits are such a weird band. You think that there's like when each era of the band, the Jerry era, when they had Michael Graves and Chud, or, that those are eras. Well, even just within 77 to 83, there's like 4 or 5 different bands in there, because every time they changed that lineup, they got new players that brought new flavors and new energy to the band, reinforming the band sound. They're changing the band in the process musically, whether they realize it or not. We know that Danzig is steering that ship, from an artistic standpoint, but the members, the people play, they have their flavor, they bring their flavor. And so the band, I'd say maybe in a sometimes positive and sometimes negative, way, change every single time they change lineups. And it was eventually they had gotten to this point from 82, because once Doyle is in the lineup, that's the one. So here's the positive and negative with Doyle, right? They kick out Bobby and they lose so much musicianship in the process. They lose a secret, what could have been a secret weapon, having Bobby as the 5th member of the band. It's funny. I was just revisiting this while I was watching the interview with Kenny, and boy, oh my God, it's so great to hear Kenny talk about it. But he's right. If they had been a 5-piece, they would have been unstoppable. So you're losing the guy with the licks, with the leads, who has the finesse, and you're replacing him with a solid, for the most part, rhythm player who kind of flies off the rails, just barely doesn't fly off the rails. That's the Misfits. They're barreling down with crazy amounts of speed and barely connecting with the track, But the positive to that is Doyle is now in the band. So they're not going to lose another guitarist. And frankly, they never did. I mean, they pretty much didn't lose another guitarist. I mean, yes, Doyle left, and, you had Uncle Dez come in. You had Jerry Jr., Jerry Other come in. But I mean, put that aside. Doyle has been the sole guitarist since that time. And now they have AC, and now they sound friggin' phenomenal. It just proves the point about Bobby. Imagine if it was Bobby instead of AC. No offense to AC. So Doyle has sort of stabilized some things because now they don't have to worry about a guitar player. Not only is he Jerry's brother, but he lives with Jerry. It's like the perfect situation for going out on a tour in the sense of, yeah, Doyle's still in high school. He joined the band in 1980 when he was 16 years old, but he's also in Jerry's pocket, under Jerry's wing and Glenn's wing. Those guys who, again, what did Glenn always want from the beginning? And it's something that I'll explore even more in depth in the documentary, They Came from Lodi. Glenn always wanted people that he could mold. To the extent that's what Jerry only did with Michael Graves with the 95 Misfits. They wanted guys they could mold. Why? Because, well, for a lot of reasons. But I can tell you, as a filmmaker, I understand that in the sense that I don't know about any of you out there, but I'll say this. I will take a guy with a belly full of passion and who's competent and shows up on time and puts 1,000% into what they do, even if they don't have the skill yet. I would rather take that guy than take the guy who has too much skill, might be too fucking cocky. You know what I'm saying? It creates this. It's an amazing thing when you find someone like that. When you find someone who wants to be there, who wants to put in 100,000%, who doesn't view it as a job, who doesn't, who is going to show up. You know what I mean? That's something that is so hard to do when you're doing something creative or artistic. It's so hard, especially when there is no money, in the sense of like with the Misfits, at least at this time, there was no money. But little did these guys know that they were essentially investing in their pension, with things the way the things are going today. So Doyle is there. You got the twins of evil flanking Glenn in the middle. The trifecta is complete, but there's still a missing piece of the puzzle. The drummer situation. The drummer situation just totally keeps like falling out of place. First they lose Googie. They lose him to Cheeseburger and a bald head, amongst other things. Catch those details, and They Came from Lodi. They lose Googie. Then they lose Robo because Robo was living with Glenn in the basement and couldn't stand it because Glenn was like, Robo, fold those sleeves. Fold those sleeves. You're not paying rent, Robo. And Robo left eventually. And as we're gonna hear about it. We're gonna hear about it right now. We'll read into that. I told you we're gonna retread a little bit. I think it's pretty good. We do talk about things often, but we've never retread material. And this is the first time that we're actually retreading something that we've explored in a previous episode. But I like to think that I got enough guys here that maybe were not there when we did that episode, or maybe you haven't seen that episode yet, that it was part of the secret history of Jerry Only, that 5-part series. We got to go back and look at the ugly things, because that's the name of the fanzine, because we want to hear from Jerry's point of view how brain damage got into the picture before we hear from Brian himself. But yeah, so Robo didn't work out. So what's happening is they can't get a drummer in the band. They just can't hold a drummer in the band. At one point, Harley Flanagan was asked to be a drummer. Steve Zing was approached. Eerie Von was approached. All these guys were approached. There were so many people that were approached to be drummers, and it was hard to keep a drummer in a band that's not making money, a band that has it's a touring band now. They're a professional band. They need to be out on the road. These guys, Glenn is committed, and then at the same time, you have other things that are happening. Jerry is married and he's got a baby on the way, and a lot of things started to conflict, but they needed a drummer. So let's go into that. I want to read Jerry. Let's read what Jerry has to say about this first before we move on, just to sort of set the tone of where things were at. So without further ado, Bobby was on drugs, but it was so much more than that. I'm not going to go into that whole thing. That is another issue. What's up, Neon? He was out of it on Ludes when he puked on London. That's right. That is true. All right, let's go to the shared screen. It's reading time, kids. All right, we got to find the part where he's talking about this, though. All right, I think this is it right here. You want to hear something? Whiskey, blah, blah, blah. Earth AD. We're not going to talk about Earth AD. Okay, here we go. This is where things get problematic for the band, just as things are also sort of, cooking. So Mike Stacks, who did this interview, this is from Ugly Things number 12 in 1993, Jerry Only interview. Jerry Only, Mike Stacks. So when you were doing Earth AD, the band was basically starting to break up. Tell me how the breakup happened. Jerry Only. Well, the breakup happened because Glenn wanted to be the boss. The thing is, there is no boss. We were a team. Glenn would book the shows. I would pay the money to get us there, okay? He would manage it, but I would produce the band. If the guy with the money is the producer, you know what I mean? In other words, he'd say, we're going to play here, we're going to play there. I would do all the mailings and all the T-shirts and all that kind of shit like that out of my company. Basically, the money was my end of the deal and the performance and getting shit done. Oh, we need a stage. We need a van. We need this. We need that. I made everything go. I was the wheels of the whole project. So what happened was Robo split. Dun, dun, dun. Robo split. When we came back off the last tour with Robo, what happened was my mom said, Robo's nearly as old as I am. I really don't want him living by my house. I wasn't about to argue with her because the thing was, we just put up a whole bunch of bands like Black Flag and Social Distortion. Anybody that was fucking in town wound up in my house. I had a pool and a basketball court and the whole deal. So you could park your bus in my backyard and spend the whole week if you have to. No problem. The thing was, Robo went to live by Glenn. Glenn wasn't booking any shows like he was supposed to, and Robo kind of got a little bored by that. The way I picture it is, Glenn invited Robo to be in the band, to move out from California. The band should pay his fucking room and board. That's my opinion. Like if I called you up, hey, Mike, want to play drums in my band? And you get out here and I don't book any shows and I want to charge you rent? Now that's pretty effing stupid. So he started being a jerk to Robo. He would have Robo, He would have Robo. God, I would give $1 million. I said this in the last episode when we talked about this. I would give $1 million to see this scene. He would have Robo sit down and glue 45 sleeves. Glenn was a stickler at saving 2 cents. I told him, hey, listen, I work 12 hours a day and I build my own equipment. I practice with the band. I make sure the band knows what they're playing. I don't have time to glue 45 sleeves. I don't care what you're saving. You don't want to pay to have them done that way, then you glue them. So he had Robo gluing 45. And by the way, 45 is in 45, like the records, 7-inch 45s. So he had Robo gluing 45 sleeves. And first you have to cut them out. They weren't even cut out. So Robo eventually said, hey, fuck this. I'm sorry. It's so funny. Robo said, hey, fuck this. All I want is my money for a beer every night. Because Robo would drink a 6-pack and watch TV and then go to bed. Imagine all you have to do to keep your drummer happy is give him a 6-pack, let him watch TV, and then go to bed. It's like having a pet. Robo was like having a pet in Glenn's house. Glenn wanted to make him do stuff. Sorry. So Glenn wouldn't give him any money, and he started hassling him about paying rent. That feels kind of self-sabotaging in a way. I mean, Glenn, what are you thinking? Uncle Glenn, what are you doing? Then Robo came to work for me and he was making a paycheck. But when he went home at night, he didn't want to see a 45 sleeve. And Glenn didn't realize how jealous he really was of everybody. But it really rubbed him the wrong way that Robo was able to say, here, you want $50 for rent? Here's $50. Leave me alone. I'm not gluing sleeves. You follow what I mean? So he kept picking on Robo, pushing him to fight him and shit. So Robo just came to me one day and said, listen, this guy's an asshole. I'm getting the fuck out of here. I like playing with you and Doyle, but this guy's just pushing me to the limit. I don't need this shit. I'm not getting paid. I said, well, Robo, I don't really blame you. So Robo got on a plane and split. Now Robo did that. And 2 weeks after that, we had to play in a show in Detroit. So now we're coming to, this is where that's just setting you all up for the final show in Detroit. Now, remember, there's supposed to be a tour after this, but probably, obviously it didn't happen. So Robo got on a plane and split. Now, Robo did that, and 2 weeks after that, so Robo quit 2 weeks before they had to play a show in Detroit for the Necros. Buddies of ours put on the show, and they'd gone out in the cold and hung up posters and whatever, okay? Then 2 weeks after that, we were supposed to go to Germany for the Earth album that Glenn was sending tapes to or some shit, and we were supposed to go to Germany and make some big bucks. So they would have done their first European show. So what happened was, this is just 4 weeks before I got to leave for Germany. Now, I just can't walk out of my factory for a month without covering my ass. I can go for a month as long as no one needs anything I make. My factory still has to function. I ship about $10,000 a day. I can't go for 30 days and lose $10,000 shipping for 30 days. That's $300,000 fucking dollars for me to go out to Germany. You know what I'm saying? So I told him, listen, Glenn, if Robo's splitting, I think you maybe better apologize to him and ask him to hang, because I don't have the time. By covering my ass, it's going to take me a month to cover my ass for a month. Bottom line is, if you want to go away for 3 weeks, you got to make 3 weeks worth of parts. You got to cut and make those parts besides what you got to make anyway. So Glenn's all like, oh, I'll find a drummer. So no drummer starts coming around. And I tell him, hey, listen, Googie said he'll play the gigs, but he wants to get paid. So before this, Googie was a member of the band, in the sense that whatever he made with the Misfits when they were touring, he was putting back into the band because he was a shareholder of the band, I guess, right? Like, you know, that's how it works. Everybody is reinvesting in the band. You would imagine if you're reinvesting in the band, it's because you have equity. I think the right word is equity, sweat equity in the band, meaning that if they're going to get signed to a major label and make $20,000, perhaps you would think that they would each take $5,000 cut of that, because they all have the equity in the band, apart from whatever the band might need. But at this point, Googie is willing to come back, and he says he'll play the gigs. Googie knows the Earth AD material too. Googie would have recorded Earth AD had he not left. It wouldn't have been Robo. It would have been Googie. Googie says, hey, and I tell him, hey, listen, Googie says he'll play the gigs, but he wants to get paid. So Googie wants to be a hired gun. He's no longer necessarily in the band. He's just a hired live player. If he's coming to Germany, he wants his cut, and he wants it every night, which is fair. Googie got screwed over once before, but he didn't want to play with Googie. Glenn, he's talking about Glenn. He said, I'd rather not play in this band if I got to play with Googie. I said, okay, but if you get a drummer, you work him in, because I don't have the time. And there's no way, if I tell you that, hey, the bass player and the guitarist have got to work to cover their ass, you got to break the drummer in. How are you going to do it realistically? So he's saying to Glenn, you got to break in the new guy. You don't want to do it with Googie. And probably it probably, really chafed Glenn to think of paying Googie, to play drums, just so that they could, continue to function as a band. That's where they had gotten to. They literally needed a hired gun, and they were going to use a former member to be that hired gun. And previously, this had kind of happened with Joey Image a little bit, but that's a story for another day. If we ain't going to sit there and spend the time, there's no way that Glenn, with his limited playing ability, can teach a drummer how to play 35 fucking songs in 2 weeks. So I told Glenn, I said, Glenn, okay, no problem. If this is the way you want to play it, this is how we'll play it. You get the drummer. We'll practice like a week. We'll try and get as many practices in as we can. We gave him the benefit of the doubt. You want to be an asshole, we'll try it your way. But, again, so while Glenn is self-sabotaging, I feel like Jerry is also self-sabotaging. If anything that Jerry is saying is even a fraction true, I would say that Jerry is just as liable. It's like, if you know that Glenn can't do this, so why would you allow this to happen? Since you have so much sway in the band, that's what's interesting about it. It's like they're both putting it on each other. I think at the end of the day, those dudes probably just didn't want to be in a band with each other anymore. They had outgrown each other. Glenn's experimenting with the Samhain stuff already, and, disillusioned, wants to leave. Jerry's got a family. Those dudes, they love Van Halen. They want to do, metal. So what happened was we took the kid, and this is where Brian Keats enters the story. We took the kid, this drummer, and we go all the way out to Detroit, an 18-hour drive. And we go to open with 20 eyes, and the kid gets nervous and can't fucking keep on the beat through the whole song. We're playing in front of about 3,000 people, and we look like jerks. So what do? Doyle walked over and tapped the kid on the shoulder and said, fucking go backstage. And we used the drummer from the Necros, Todd Swalla, and we did the whole set. Now, Todd Swalla, who had done many gigs with the Necros and the Misfits, he was the drummer for the Necros, was also a huge Misfits fan. All those guys in the Necros were Misfits fans. So Todd knew the songs. Todd had filled in the past. They had been screwed. When Googie left the band, before Robo came in, Todd Swalla came in a pinch and played drums for them and filled in. He filled in a couple of times. So why not? And honestly, you don't get Eerie Von, you don't get Steve Zing. Why not get Todd Swalla? Why not have Todd Swalla? Especially if he's in the other band that you like playing with. I'm sure Todd Swalla wouldn't mind hopping behind the kit. It's literally like, two bands, one drummer. Maybe that's not a good, maybe that's not such a healthy mix. But, I'm just saying, if you're in a pinch, they could have they could have taken Todd Swalla to Germany with them. They would have been fine. It would have worked great. So they did the whole set with Todd Swalla. But me and Doyle, we just stepped back and sat on top of our amps and let Glenn handle the whole fucking show by himself. You know what I mean? Because without every piece being there, you can't get the job done. If you got 4 wheels on your car and you take one off, how far do you go? You may get to the end of the block, but you're not going to be able to go around the country. You wear it right down to the fucking garbage within 100 miles. And that's what happened. You can't pull a drummer out of a band 2 weeks before a big show in Detroit and 4 weeks before a fucking tour of Germany and not be willing to deal with any of the old people who know your stuff. So Jerry is, it's like, dude, all right, you don't want to, you're kicking Robo out. We need Googie. I mean, like, you're refusing to work with Googie. You want to bring in someone who's green, and apparently it was because of the haircut. Glenn liked Brian's haircut at the time, supposedly, something like that. Let's see what he says. We had to teach Googie 5 new songs. I could have done that in 2. We had to teach, meaning if Googie had come on as a hired gun, they would just need to teach Googie 5 new songs, right? I could, and Jerry's saying he could have done that in 2 weeks. Plus, there's also that chemistry and that second hand that they have from doing shows and being in a band together. I could have done it in 2 weeks. Glenn had to step down off his high horse and deal with Googie for the good of the band, but he wouldn't do it. He could have told me, and that's ultimately what it comes down to right then and there. Glenn had to deal with Googie for the good of the band, and at that point, the Misfits were not worth. They were not. The juice was no longer worth the squeeze for Glenn at that point, because if it was, then Glenn would have put up with Googie. Like at the end of the day, it's that same thing I've said about, if you really want to tour, no matter what's going on with you in your life, if you really want to tour, if you really want to be in a touring band, you will find a way to do that thing. Same thing with anything in art. If you love being an artist and you love doing that thing and that thing gets your dick or your tits hard, whatever, you will find a way to do it. You will, because it's like one of those things where, like, at least for me, it's like, I'll feel like I'm on fire if I don't, And so maybe Glenn just didn't love the Misfits that much at that point when he wasn't willing to work with Googie. Maybe it was a pride thing. Who knows? Who honestly knows? Only Glenn knows, really. That's what he could have said. He couldn't even admit that he was wrong. For the good of the band, he wouldn't do it. He could have told me in Detroit, hey, you guys were fucking right. I was wrong. Call Googie. We still got 2 weeks. Let's go to Germany. That's what he could have said. He couldn't even admit he was wrong. So when I said that his ego was more important to him than the safety of the band, I realized that he's a shitty leader. I said, Glenn, it's one thing that you want to be the big guy. It's another thing if you suck at it. You don't make decisions in this band based on emotional fucking opinions. Sorry. You don't make decisions based on emotional fucking opinions. I agree with that. That makes sense to me. If he would have come up with this kid and this kid would have fucking cranked, we'd probably still be playing. So Mike Stacks asked, did you even get to rehearse with this kid? Jerry Only says, yeah, I did what I could. I had a show coming up in Detroit and I wanted it to be good. I wanted to believe that it was going to be a good show. You need that. You need to believe that you could succeed. And that's what makes you try. Mike Stacks says, but instead it turned out to be your shittiest show ever. He says, well, it happened to be Glenn's first solo show. So that's how Jerry Only thinks of the show. That is Glenn's first solo show. We moved back and actually hopped on top of our amps and played our set sitting down because he betrayed the strength of the band. He betrayed all the basic rules, which made the band what it was. The thing was, all he had to do was admit it. The thing was, all he had to do was admit it. He never even admitted it to himself. He was wrong. He was so fucking wrong, and it was so obvious. All he had to do to fix it was say, look, I don't know what the fuck was in my head. Mike Stack says, some people just can't do that, Jerry Only. Well, that's too bad. They don't make a call if you can't. Then don't make a call if you can't accept when you make a bad call. So that's how the band ended up, and I haven't talked to him since. Mike Stack says, so after you got off the stage that night, what happened? Jerry Only says, the kid got real drunk, the drummer, and Glenn wanted to leave the kid in fucking Detroit. Can you believe that? I told Glenn, I'll leave you here before I leave that fucking kid here. They talk about him like he's a kid, and he was young, but I think Doyle was younger than him. I think Doyle is 1 year younger than Brian Damage Keats. So he says, I told Glenn, I'll leave you here before I leave that fucking kid here. We drove back, and we were driving my truck with the U-Haul. So Glenn sat in the back with the kid, and me and Doyle talked all the way back. We were talking about football. It was football season. So we had enough sports in our head to last us all the way home without any tensions. We dropped Glenn off. All he took was a suitcase full of his clothes, his shit. He didn't own anything that the band owned. He didn't even own the microphone. So Mike Stacks says, so that was the last time we talked to him? Jerry Only says, yeah. Mike Stacks, have you seen him or anything? Jerry Only, not actually face-to-face, but that doesn't bother me. Probably still blah, 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 blah. All right, that's the end of that. Yes, okay. Just double checking. So that's what Jerry Only has to say about the situation. A couple of extra things. All right, I'm going to insert something in here before we move on. Well, real quick, let's see, before I mention that, let's see now what our friend Doyle has to say about the situation. Ready? Let's pop that open real quick. Where's Doyle? Doyle. There he is. All right. Okay, ready? We got Doyle right here. What does Doyle say about all this? You should be able to hear this just fine. Everybody, let me know if you can't, okay?
October 1983, the Misfits played the annual Halloween show, this time in Detroit. The drummer for that show was named Brain Damage. He got drunk before the show and couldn't play properly. So after a few songs, you escorted him off the stage. Yes, things came to a head, and Danzig announced to the audience that it would be the band's final show.
I don't know if he announced it, but that dude did get escorted, and he wasn't too drunk to play.
Escorted in
a Darth Vader manner.
Choked him. Yeah, that sounds like a nightmare, but oh well. Yeah, who did someone else come and fill in for
the
him?
drummer from the Necros, Todd Swalla, jumped up and played all the songs.
All right, perfect. So at least you got to finish the show. During a performance at the House of Blues.
So that's what our buddy Doyle has to say about the situation. I mean, I love how Jerry was like this whole thing. Doyle very quickly explained that situation. So here's another thing. Here's another piece of this puzzle that I think some of you might know about, but some of you may not know about. So some of you know, some of you might. By the way, oh my God, please like, share, and subscribe, like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe to this channel. That is a big help. Go to my Facebook, no, not my Facebook, my website, fromus.com. Click on some of the ads there. It puts pennies in my AdSense account. It's a big help, you guys. Or buy a t-shirt. I have I have a They Came From Lodi t-shirt in the comments, and I have a Samhain inspired t-shirt in the comments. So check out all that stuff, or rent one of my movies on Vimeo. Just wanted to put that out there. So anyway, so while I was doing my documentary or collecting interviews for the documentary, They Came From Lodi, I stumbled upon, let me see if I can find a picture of this gentleman. I stumbled upon a resource that, as far as I knew, was untapped, that had not really been, sort of explored and sort of, spoken to. It was this guy named Russ Gibb. Who is Russ Gibb? This guy was a very important guy in the Midwest Detroit hardcore scene. Here he is. That's him as an old man. That's Russ Gibb right there. That's him as a young DJ. Russ Gibb was a DJ, guys. He was a DJ. Let's go to the Wikipedias for a second, because it's going to do a better job. I don't want to do him a disservice. He passed away in 2019, which really bummed me out. I had a phone call conversation with Russ where we spoke for about 30 minutes, and I had every intention of interviewing him and just did not get a chance to do so. And he's gone. And this is why you got to interview them while you can, because they pass away. And thank God that I interviewed as many people as I interviewed, because a lot of them have passed away. Some of them, 6 of them. 6 people that are in my documentary are no longer with us. So it just goes to show what can happen if you don't, it's good to record these things. So Russ Gibb, he was the DJ for a Detroit radio station called WKNR-FM. And he was a disc jockey. And what he did was he basically coined the theory that Paul is dead. Told disc jockey, a caller. So it was a caller. But okay, so Russ Gibb, sorry, I misunderstood this. Russ Gibb broke Paul is dead in 1968. Somebody called up Russ Gibb, explained the rumor and the clues. Gibb and other callers then discussed the rumor on the air for the next hour. 2 days after this broadcast, the Michigan Daily published a satirical review of Abbey Road by the University of Michigan student Fred Labor under the headline, "McCartney Dead, New Evidence Brought to Light." So basically, this guy, Russ Gibb, who was involved with all the hardcore stuff, he also is the reason why everybody knows this Paul is dead stuff from the Beatles. Paul McCartney, for those who are not aware of what I'm speaking, I'm talking about Paul McCartney here. Pretty cool. Gibb operated the Grand Ballroom in Detroit and was a major player in the 1960s and early 1970s Detroit music scene. He was instrumental in giving the MC5, Ted Nugent, and Iggy Pop their start. I did not know. And had I known that, I would have asked him about it when I spoke to him on the phone. The Grand Ballroom was also where The Who played their rock opera Tommy for the first time in the United States. I didn't know that either. Gibb also owned or leased other live music venues around the Midwest, including the Easttown Theater, the Michigan Theater, where the New York Dolls played, and the Birmingham Palladium. He expanded his musical endeavors when he invested in Cream Magazine. Gibb bought the Dearborn, Michigan, Wayne, Michigan, and the Grosse Pointe, Michigan cable licenses in the late 1970s. So one of the places that he operated, Russ Gibb operated, or was affiliated with, was Greystone Hall in Detroit, which was the hub, the central hub for Negative Approach, the Necros, the Meatmen, just all these bands from the Midwest, all the touch and go bands. You have the Touch and Go label. Alternative Tentacles is in California. You got, all these different labels all over the place. You got Discord in DC. You got SST in California as well. You know what I mean? You got all these different record labels. Well, in the Midwest, you had Touch and Go, and the bands from Touch and Go would play. This is one of the places that they would play, that sort of thing. Additionally, Russ worked with youths, with young kids, teenage punk kids, with helping them with audio, video. Thank you. it's not grand, it's Grandee. Trevor, thank you so much. It's Grandee, the Grandee Ballroom. Sorry. He would basically have these young kids operate equipment. I'm not sure if it was Target Video. Maybe I'm confusing the names. But basically, all that stuff. I think he was affiliated with Why Be Something You're Not. That whole series. I think that might have been part of Russ Gibb's thing. But basically, he was encouraging and teaching and nurturing these kids in recording this hardcore music that's being played at these shows in his venues as well. And there is a vast archive of tapes. At least there was in 2010 or 2011 when I spoke to Russ Gibb. There was a vast archive of tapes. And I asked him, were there any Misfits tapes? And he said he didn't know. He said that he needed people to go in there and digitize all the tapes and clean them up. So there is a stockpile, a plethora of hardcore material just waiting to be, poured over, discovered. I don't know if it still exists, maybe not. That man, 40-year-old tape, 42-year-old tape, 41-year-old tape. That stuff rots after a time. VHS is not a stable format. You know what the most stable format is? Actually, celluloid, if you can believe it. Celluloid can last for like 150 years, 300 years. Not the nitro celluloid. That's the early stuff. Anyway, point was, Russ Gibb had the Misfits stayed at Russ Gibb's house. Thank you. It was back porch videos. Yes. Jump Fart 666. Thank you. Back porch video, not Target Video. That's what I think what Russ Gibb was involved with. He was involved, I believe he might have been involved with the filming of that last Misfits show at the Greystone Ballroom. So Russ Gibb did all this stuff. And what he would do as well is he would put bands up that would pass through town. As anybody who knows anything about punk rock and particularly hardcore and indie rock in the 80s, if you're an independent, hardworking, gigging band, there was like a network. And, the most famous network of all was the Black Flag Creepy Crawl that would go all over the United States. They call it the Creepy Crawl. But, there was this understanding, you're down by Texas, you stay with the big boys, you're over here, you go to DC, you stay at the Discord house, that sort of thing. Everybody, you're in New York, you can stay at Jerry Only's parents' house, the Circle Jerks, the Black Flag, these bands, Gangrene, whatever, they can crash, that sort of thing. So there's this whole idea, this whole support network of places where you can crash. Well, Russ Gibb would allow bands to crash, and he had the Misfits crash at his house for that final show. And he told me all about it over the phone. He told me so many things. And you know what the saddest part is, you guys? I don't remember any of it. I remember one thing. I remember he told me the next day, he mentioned something about the boys. He called them the boys. And he said that the Misfits were very polite around his wife. They're all sitting, the four of them were sitting, they made pancakes for the Misfits, and they all sat the next day after the show and quietly ate pancakes and were just very polite, despite, being, with their jackets and their leather and yada, 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 and their devil locks, that they were just very polite, well-behaved boys at this place or something like that. And Russ agreed to an interview, and thank you, Winston. I appreciate that. Russ agreed to an interview, and I just never, again, I was just a dude. I was a dude with a camera, and, I did a Florida trip. I did a Virginia trip. I did a DC trip. I went many times to New Jersey and Connecticut and all over. I had plans to go to California. I had plans to go back to Chicago. I had plans to go to Detroit, and I never made it there. And part of the sad reality is I never got a chance to ask meticulous, thoughtful, descriptive questions to Russ Gibb about that time. And as far as Russ Gibb's point of view, it's lost to time. We'll never know. Only what I remember, I guess, or if anybody else, there might be more people that remember that, spoke to him, but I just thought it was so interesting. This old guy who just knew who the Misfits were, and just, he was so nice. I think I still have his phone number in my phone. And it's just such a bummer, man. It's just such a bummer that stuff is not around. You know what I wonder? I wonder it now live. I really should have prepared this. I wonder if I still, I never delete an email. I wonder if Russ's email is still in my archive, and if so, did he say anything about? There we go. There's Russ Gibb. Huh. He said, Mr. Frummas, please call me at this number between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. any day. Russ Gibb. That was it. So then we had our whole conversation over the phone, unfortunately. How about that? That sucks. Sometimes there's a little bit of talk in the email before we hop on the phone. I always did pre-interviews with people. And it's funny, I just stumbled a bunch of recordings that I made. One of them is Arthur Googie. One of them is this guy who was doing a documentary about Glenn Danzig called The Legacy of Brutality. I'm very interested to listen back to these recordings and hear the information on them. I don't have anything for Russ Gibb, but that's what I remember. That's what I remember Russ Gibb telling me. And he was telling me about the tapes, and we were supposed to do an interview. And so he was there. He was there for that fateful day. And he just said the boys were very quiet and polite as they ate pancakes at the table before they hopped in the van and drove all the way back to New Jersey. And so that's Russ Gibb. That's one wrinkle there. Now, the next wrinkle we're going to look at before we get to the main part of this whole thing, the main mamma jamma, is we're going to look at Todd Swalla. I can't believe I neglected Todd Swalla initially. I'm glad I was able to pull this up. This was this is by Anthony Bengal. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought this was Ben Crowell's thing. This is even better because Anthony's in a band called Chesty Malone and the Slice 'Em Ups. And he also, I guess he does this blog. He did a great Steve Zing interview. This is from June 10th, 2019. I'm sure he talks in-depthly about that. But I can't read the whole interview. We're skipping directly to the Misfits section for the sake of clarity. And yeah, let's see here. I saw you guys at CBGB in the early 80s, and you guys had Misfit skulls all over the place on your shirts, on your hoodies, on your amps, etc. Is it safe to say you guys were obsessed? What was it like playing shows with them back then? We were the Misfits' little brother band for about a year. We were huge fans of theirs, so we were in awe to be playing with them. It was never a dull moment. Anthony asked, you actually played drums for the Misfits a couple times. Did you rehearse at all, or did you just kind of know the songs? What was the final Misfits show like? So we're getting right there, right into the meat of this thing. Let me post this interview for anybody who wants it to take a look afterwards. Give some clicks to Anthony's blog, if you will. That's in the comments, guys, right there in the live chat. I rehearsed twice for the Irving Plaza show. Last show in Detroit was spontaneous, thanks to Brian Damage being drunk. Those songs are easy to play and memorize. They're basic. They're pretty basic 1, 2, 3, 4 punk, right? Mimicking Googie was boring, so I would elaborate a little bit. Nothing too fancy. Detroit was a crazy night. Necros played great, and kids were insane. And then he asked him, what do you think of the recent Misfits reunion shows? Have you gone to any of the shows? He goes, I waited 30 years for that gig and got bumped by the dude from Slayer, Dave Lombardo. Fuck you, Satan. Poor Todd. Honestly, poor Todd. I've interviewed Todd a whole bunch for the documentary. I actually have to do a few more interviews with Todd, but I totally feel Todd's pain. I've spoken to him about this, and that sucks. It really does. But I like the way he said at the end, fuck you, Satan. So there you have it. I mean, but Todd is immortalized at the final show on videotape. So is Brain Damage. I would say Brian Damage. I'm sorry, I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but Brian, what a really, that's not a great punk rock name. I'm sorry. I'm just not a fan of that personally, if I'm being honest. So that's what Todd Swalla has to say about the issue. I don't think Glenn is on record ever talking about it. So we heard from 3 of the people that were there that night. And unfortunately, we can't hear from Russ Gibb because I'm an idiot and didn't at least record that phone conversation. I wish I had. So now we're on to Brian, who's going to speak from beyond the grave. We actually can talk to Brian, or at least we can hear from Brian. Now, I just want to give a small shout out here to this guy. And, you know, I gotta hand it to him. He is a phenomenal archivist. He's this guy, the Fiend, the original Misfits Fiend Crypt guy. And the reason why is because he has, so it's almost like savant with like he's like a meticulous savant, if there's such a thing, in that he's just so good at archiving everything and, you know, really doing it for documentation purposes, which is so which I'm so grateful for, because like I said, I wanted to do a whole show on this and I couldn't do it. I couldn't do a show on this because I didn't have the didn't have the content. It was locked. The guy who did the interview with Brian had locked this blog. I remember reading it when it came out, you know, and it's so sad. And he died. He was the first Misfit to die. He's the second Misfit drummer to die. I can even really call Brian a Misfit. I don't know. But here's the thing about Brian. See, Brian played in so many other bands. And the real shame, and I want to say this about Brian, I did interview Brian's bandmate. Brian was in a band called The Skulls with this guy, Charlie Pipp, and Mike Mindless. Mike Mindless passed away. He is in the documentary. Mike Mindless passed away. He, you know, it's funny. Mike Mindless said that Brian never once mentioned that he played in the Misfits. Mike was a Misfits fan. I don't know if Charlie Pipp was a Misfits fan. Funny thing is, I interviewed both Charlie and Mike for the documentary. I don't know why I interviewed Charlie, but I did. I don't even remember what our interview was about. I don't even know if it's worth anything or good, but I'm glad I have it. And I'm glad I have Mike's, even though it was done in a really weird place. But Mike said that when he was in the band with, and I'm trying to find, let's take a look, related bands. So we're going to the Almighty Misfits Central, we're going to related bands and recording. So all these bands, there's a huge list of bands here, and a whole slew of them are only on here because of Mark Kennedy's meticulous need to document, you know, every single band that any of the other members played in at any time. It's pretty funny. Like 3 Day Wheelie, that's probably Brian Keats. See? So, you know, and look at this. Look at the God, Mark Kennedy. What a genius. But here we go. So let's see what it says about Brian Damage Keats on the official Misfits Central. Let's also see what it says on the timeline as well, right? Because we're trying to be thorough here. Let's go to our timeline. We all know this timeline well. I based my work on this timeline. I'm gonna go down, 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 down. Here we go. We're gonna look at the timeline. We should have done that first, frankly. Brian Damage Keats was born in Brooklyn, New York on February 11th, 1963, and played for Genöcide and Verbal Abuse before Danzig invited him to join the Misfits. So he had already played for Genöcide and Verbal Abuse, 2 bands, and Genöcide also had Damien. So Damien, Pistol Pete here, that's Damien Marshall was in a band with Brian. How about that? There's another connection right there. Right, and that was fronted by Bobby Ebb. So Genöcide and Verbal Abuse were both respected, well established, you know, hardcore acts. So it's not like Brian was just a green kid. This dude knew his way behind a kit and would go on and play in so many bands. Right, he played in so many bands. You know, so that's what kind of bums me out about the whole situation, is because he's not a bad drummer. He was it was a bad situation, you know, and he gets the shit end of the stick for that, you know, for all time, even in life and in death. So he had been in Genöcide and Verbal Abuse before Danzig invited him to join the Misfits as the latest in a long line of drummers. He began rehearsing with the band in October of 1983, just a few weeks before the band's upcoming Halloween show in Detroit. His first and only performance turned out to be the band's farewell show. He played 13 songs. Wait, it says right here he played 13 songs of the set and was then replaced for the rest of the show by Todd Swalla of the Necros, although in every other account, he only played 1 or 2 songs. Even Brian himself says he only played 1 or 2 songs. So I don't know where 13 comes from. That's weird. He was replaced by Todd Swalla of the Necros after the Misfits. So check this out. Look at all the bands that Brian played in after the Misfits. After the Misfits, and yet the Misfits are what he is known for more than any of these other bands. He's released so much material with all these other bands, and yet the Misfits, who he only played 2 songs with for 1 show, that's the band that he's known for more than anything. That's the type of footprint that something like the Misfits, you know, leaves. And it's funny, I was actually talking about this with oh, I just had a major pothole. Anyway, sorry, I lost my place. 13 songs, Todd Swalla of the Necros. After the Misfits, Brian remained in New York City and went on to play drums for Hellbent, the Cretans, the Hellhounds, the Skulls, that's the band that I was just talking about, Angels in Vain, Princess Pang, Raging Slab, and the Diamondbacks. He later moved to Los Angeles, where he still lives, and played or recorded with Wink, Pressurehead, Baron Jive, Sylvain. So he played for Sylvain, the Light Bachwood Movement, Link Protrudy, and the J-Men, Paul Inman, Meru, Low Pop Suicide, 3 Day Wheelie, Bortek, Susan Hoffs, Doppler. Oh, he played with the Fuzztones and Tram Driver. He has also done live performances with Kathy Fisher, with Drew Ross, Sages and Sears with 2 Fuzztone members, African Violet with Rita DeAlbert, Tim Harrington, the $100 Band with Drew Ross and Gary Eaton, Jason Faulkner, Woozy, Dave. Oh, he played with Dave Vanian and the Phantom Chords and recorded session demos with Zoe Poldos and Bubblegun with Ted Thompson. Bijou Phillips, she's an actress. Swirl 360 with Roger Manning. I feel like I'm making up some of these band names, though. It's kind of funny. Tahula, Mary Wilson, Michael Hatley, Kim Ritchie, Billy Idol. There you go, Billy Idol. Tim Anderson, Leah Androni, and Colony. Brian died on January 12th, 2010. So he's been gone for a little over 11 years. I'm not going to read what his equipment was. So that's that right there. And then when I was talking about the Skulls, he played with the Skulls in 1984. They were a 3-piece. And he came back in 1985. And was he on Blacklight 13? I don't know. That I don't know. But it is pretty interesting how Brian left to join Angels in Vain, while still a member of Angels in Vain. He was actually come back. So he did record Blacklight 13 with them. It was recorded one night at House of Music. So there you go. That is Brian. By the way, if you're just joining us, yes, Robbie, that's right. It's like getting made being in the Misfits, and that's the truth, man. If you are in the Misfits, it's like it's funny. Someone in the group mentioned, by the way, real quick, like, subscribe, share, please. If you're just joining us, please leave a comment. Please like this video. Please subscribe to my channel. I have so many videos like this, so much content. Lots of ways to support the channel. It's all in the description. But yes, Robbie's right. Being in the Misfits is like being a made member of the Mafia, man. It's like you get put, what's it called? They open the book and they make you. And once you're made, you're made. you're not made for life, but it's like you're one of the guys. You know, that's why we revere all these guys who was like, oh, he was there for 3 seconds and hit a tambourine on the B side of One Below. Like, it doesn't matter what you did. He walked into the room and he just breathed. He took a few breaths. You know, even the Merp who never officially joined the band. That was another drummer we didn't even talk about. The Merp, even the Merp has a small little footnote in probably the most famous thing that he did, besides having the only Christ the Conqueror tattoo, is that, you know, he was supposed to record with the Misfits for Walk Among Us. Interesting to think. He only played one song live in each of those. Yes, that's what Brian was known for. Again, this is not right because Brian is passed. We shouldn't speak ill of the dead, but it's not speaking ill. We're just having some fun. Yes, he only played one live song in each of those bands. Exactly. That's funny. So yeah, so that's the thing. And then one last thing before we hear Brian's testimony from beyond the grave. Let's just look and see what it says on the time. Oh my God, we should do the timeline. That would be so much fun. Should I save that? We should save that. Let's save that. That will be a lot of fun to go just read the whole timeline, start to finish. That's another. Okay, I'll bookmark that. But here we go. This is what it says on the timeline. Having chosen brain damage as the new Misfits drummer, Danzig apparently decided not to leave the band. By this time, Jerry had booked a tour. So it says here that Jerry had booked a tour of Germany. So it wasn't Glenn that had booked the tour to support the upcoming German release of EVILIVE and Earth AD Wolf's Blood. Jerry and Doyle, who were working overtime to fund their tour of Germany, were only able to practice with Brian once. Fateful day. The Misfits performed their Halloween show at Greystone Hall in Detroit, Michigan, with the Necros opening. Following the sound check, Brian Damage got drunk with members of the Necros and had trouble keeping up with the rest of the band when the Misfits took the stage. After 13 songs, 2 songs, Necros drummer Todd Swalla took over for the rest of the show. Before the drummer switched, Danzig announced on the stage that it was the band's last show. We've all heard that. Happy Halloween! This is our final show. Last show ever. The entire show was videotaped on U-matic tape with a 3-camera mix by a local fan named Dave Heb, not Heb. I tried to track down Dave Heb, I believe. Did not happen. It did not happen. Yes, that's right. That's right. We just did a 5-hour podcast. It was me. It was Joe Vasta, JV Bastard, Loki, Robbie Bloodshed, Howie Wowie from Nimvind, and our friend Ramey, who actually runs Misfit Central, the forum on Misfit Central now. And I showed the picture that I took of the Merp's arm with the Christ the Conqueror tattoo. Yeah, I tried to find Dave, the guy who shot the show, and I could not. Todd Swalla's portion of the show was also recorded on soundboard audio. The abundance of false starts and mistakes throughout the recording make it clear that the band had not rehearsed much prior to the show. 2 of the songs were covers: Black Flag's Rise Above and Negative Approach's Can't Tell No One. Jonathan Brandon of Negative Approach provided guest vocals on Can't Tell No One. Now, I wonder if they did those 2 covers because Todd knew how to drum for those songs. They had previously done Rise Above once before, I believe. But I wonder if it was because Todd was on the kit that they decided to play these songs. I don't know. The next day, one day before Halloween, the band drove back to New Jersey together, Jerry and Doyle in the front and Danzig and Brian in the back. Jerry and Doyle never spoke with either Danzig or Brian again. And right after that, Jerry and Doyle moved with their family to Vernon, New Jersey. And Glenn started Samhain with Steve Erie and Lyle, and then Pete. A little bit more complicated than that, but we're not going to go down that. We're not going to go into that. All right, it's time. Dum-ba-da-bum. Can't put it off any longer. We did it. It's time. Now we're going to talk to Brian. Sorry, this is on. So again, the Fiend Club guy. This is annoying. I love you guys. I'm glad you were able to do your Kickstarter, but you can't. Your notifications can't. This is on Facebook, unfortunately. So Brian Damage Keats, February, blah, 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 blah. So here's some excerpts. This is why, Aaron, the original Misfits Fiend Crypt guy, is so meticulous. He has all these excerpts and quotes talking about Brian before we even get to the meat of the show. Greatest original era show ever. What, Dan, you mean the last show? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I would say not. This is from Jersey Beat number 40, summer of 1990. I told Glenn to get Googie back, but instead he picks up this kid because he likes his haircut. You don't pick someone to be in your band on the basis of what the fuck he looks like. That's Jerry only. However, that's so ridiculous because look what they did with, Doyle. And obviously there were other reasons, but come on, Jerry. Or, like tell him, hey, you got to lift weights if you want to be in the band, with the 95 stuff. But Brian is a proven drummer. He played for Verbal Abuse and Genöcide. It's not like they just picked up some random kid because he liked his haircut. That's a misnomer, This is what Jerry only says in September, October of 1984, FEH number 12, page 24 to 27. Glenn picks up this kid. I got nothing against him. I'll say that till I die. He was a nice kid, and he did try because of his haircut. So in Jerry's POV, it was always about the haircut that annoyed him, that pissed him off, or at least partially. He keeps bringing it up. So Jerry says in Maximum Rock and Roll number 151, part 1, this is December 1995. So he picked a kid because of the way he had his haircut. Now, I don't know how you choose drummers around here, but we try not to look at the haircut before we hear how they play the kit. Throughout the early 90s, Jerry spread the word that the Misfits' last drummer was chosen by Glenn simply based on his haircut. But the facts are Brian Damage Keats had been making a name in New York in the New York scene since 1979 as the drummer in Genöcide and in Verbal Abuse, just prior to and during his short-lived Misfits gig. Born in New York but raised in New Jersey, he had been playing drums since the age of 11 and been in bands since he was 13. Now, I don't know. Okay, so this is all right. So now what we're seeing right now, this is the blog that, remember, I said over and over again I was locked out of. This is the blog right here and now. Okay, and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that we can read this. So what the fuck happened? Just a few years prior to his death, Brian spoke with Mark Kennedy from Misfits Central about his 2-song performance with the Misfits. Now, I have no idea where this interview comes from. I don't think it doesn't come from Misfits Central, right? There's no way it comes from Misfits Central because we would have, let's see here. Sources. Maybe something will come up. Brian. Nothing. There's nothing here about an interview. So there's no interview. Interesting. Yeah, nothing. So I don't know when he spoke with Mark Kennedy. I suppose I could email Mark and ask him. I was, of course, a big fan of the Misfits. This is Brian Keats talking, hearing Brian. I don't know if some of you might have read this already, but for some of you may not. So hearing from Brian Keats, possibly for the first time. I was, of course, a big fan of the Misfits and had seen them many times. In fact, I met Bobby Steele in the lobby of the Chelsea Hotel on the day he joined the band in 1978. I always went to see the Misfits play because I thought they were a great live band. Their gigs were also pretty infrequent and always a big event. When I was in San Francisco, still playing with Verbal Abuse, I got a call from my New York roommate saying that Glenn Danzig called asking me to join the band. At the time, I don't think I had even actually met Glenn. I don't think I had ever actually met Glenn. I think he had just seen me play in bands or had heard about me through other people. Without hesitation, I dropped everything and moved back to New York. I took the bus out to Lodi and went to Glenn's house for my audition. He told me that Robo wasn't playing in the band anymore and that they had a big Halloween show and possibly a tour of Germany coming up. I didn't know the band was about to fall apart or about the dysfunctional relationships within the band and with the ex-members. I found out pretty quickly, though. See, this is where I live. I live for the I don't want to hear any more another word from Jerry about this stuff. I want to hear what Brian has to say. I find that fascinating. It's not that I don't believe in Jerry. We've spoken of this. It's just amazing when you get to hear the other points of view in a story. That's why the best documentaries have multiple perspectives, which is why I've interviewed so many people. And I'll tell you what, even though I've interviewed so many people for my documentary, there's so many gaps. There's so many holes. There's so many places where I need, like, I can already tell as I'm starting to put things together. I'm going, I have him telling the whole story, but man, I need someone else telling the story too, and trying to figure out how I'm going to work around that. It's not easy. The Jerry interview came from Ugly Things magazine, that or Maximum Rock and Roll, talking about Brian's hair. Yeah, I know. I literally just said that. That's right up there it says it right up there, cited. I remember reading what you said earlier. Yeah. Okay. We went over to the studio where they rehearsed, which was a converted garage at Jerry and Doyle's house. My God, I would kill to interview this guy. My first memory of meeting those guys was them pulling up in a monster truck, blasting Van Halen's Unchained on the way home from working out at the gym. Not the exact image of the ghoulish misfits that I had in my head. We went into the garage and rehearsed every song that we could think of until they basically said, "You're in. Do you want to go do this thing in Detroit?" That was it. One rehearsal with the band, which doubled as my audition. We never got together to play again, and I don't remember if I even talked to them much before the Halloween show. So already, and this is why it pays to listen to, like, go through each, like, POV or hear what everybody has to say. Like, Jerry never mentions. He only said, he says, I don't think so, right? When we were reading before, he mention that he had rehearsed a few times? Like, quite clearly that was not the case. There was one rehearsal, at least according to Brian. There was one rehearsal. I believe him. I believe Brian that there was one rehearsal. I'm very sympathetic to this dude, to be honest. After I read this a long time ago, but after reading it again right now, and like looking at every single thing and thinking about what kind of chops that he had, I just think it was just a bad situation, man. It happens to everybody, man. You're just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and bad stuff happens. It happens. Let's read on. The Misfits annual Halloween show was scheduled for Saturday, October 29th, 1983 at Greystone Hall in Detroit. With the imminent release of Earth AD, a tour of Germany in the works, and a 2-record deal with I've never heard that anywhere, that there was a 2-record deal with a German label. The Misfits appeared, I guess what they're referring to is Earth AD and EVILIVE being released. That's what the 2-record deal is. But it's really just a re-release. It's not to record 2 new albums. The Misfits appeared to be on the verge of something big. And maybe that's why Glenn didn't leave, man. Maybe that's why Glenn stuck with it, even if his heart wasn't in it, because he knew that they were possibly on the verge of something, of the next level up, at least. In the very least, the next level up from where they were, right? With Brian, what Brian and the other Misfits didn't know was that Glenn was disillusioned with the band and had already started rehearsing with an early incarnation of Samhain. On the morning of the 29th, Brian arrived at Glenn's house to make the long trek from Lodi, New Jersey to Detroit. I will say it does make sense why Glenn would then just shut down on that final show if he was doing that, but I've never heard anywhere. And I guess really I should ask Steve. Maybe Steve will know. or be able to confirm that. Because as far as I know, Steve doesn't start, Steve and Erie and those guys, they don't start doing anything until November 1st, 1983, after November 1st, 1983. So I don't know. On the morning of the 29th, Brian arrived at Glenn's house to make the long trek from Lodi, New Jersey to Detroit. At Glenn's house before we left, I spotted a copy of the ultra hard to find Cough Cool single, which Glenn generously offered to me. Then we drove out to Detroit to play the Halloween show with the Necros at a pretty big place that held about 1,000 people. So Jerry said 3,000. He says about 1,000. I knew the Necros guys pretty well from when they used to tour in New York. When we got to Detroit that night, I started hanging out with them after sound check, drinking, goofing off, and having a good time. Without realizing it, I definitely started to get seriously buzzed. So there you go. There is his ultimate problem. That's where Brian just really just shits the bed in the situation. Fucked up big time. He got drunk before the show. It was stupid. He shouldn't have gotten drunk before the show. And it made the situation that he explains next even worse, right? That's ultimately what I think it comes down to. He got loaded and then he couldn't play. Well, I mean, that's the gist of the story. That's not a hot take. Eventually, we got on stage to do the show. No set list. Glenn's just going to call out the songs. During the very first tune, 20 Eyes, ? We started playing. And of course, the band is louder than all hell. I knew from seeing them so many times that they always had 10 times as much equipment as they needed. But it looks good up there, right? I was so freaking out that when Glenn called out the first song, I couldn't even hear what we were doing. It was just a complete nightmare of distortion coming through those monitors. So I can understand that. I honestly can. If that's like the situation, if that is really the reality of the situation, and exacerbated by the fact that the dude's loaded. I mean, we know those dudes played loud. I'm sure it didn't help to not have a set list. That's why you keep a set list so that everybody can be on the same track. So you don't have just a brilliant way to not have to communicate, unless you're a band like the Pixies. For those of you who don't know, I'm a huge Pixies fan. For those of you who don't know, the Pixies literally are so tight as a band that they can play about 100 songs right off the top of their head at any point in time. So they don't have a set list. Frank Black Francis, he just calls out and they can play it. And that's how tight that band is. When they do the song Vamos, Frank just goes like this to Joey. He goes, and that's how they know to play Vamos. And that's how tight that is. For the Misfits, I think set list is key. As Rue Morgue says, set list is a must-have. That is right. So, where were we? I knew from seeing them so many times, they always had 10 times as much equipment as they needed, but it looks good up there, right? I was so freaking out. It was so friggin' loud when Glenn called out the first song. I couldn't hear what we were doing. It was just a complete nightmare of distortion coming through the monitors. So right after that, Doyle walks over screaming, "What the hell's going on?" And I yell back that the sound was all fucked up and that I couldn't hear anything. So now Glenn calls out the second song, which I can't even discern the title of through the distortion. And I'm just playing along, hoping to hear something, anything in the roar that will let me figure out what we're playing. But it's the same thing, just that's when Doyle comes over and, still screaming, lifts me up by the collar and literally drags me from the stage. How humiliating. I feel for that guy, man. I do. I feel for everybody in the situation, but the band's disorganized. They're doing everything kind of half-assed. This is from that's what it's called. So this is originally from the Bare Bones Hardcore blog spot. And this is from October 2005. I remember Halloween. I'm going to put that link. You're not going to be able to get in, though. It's locked. It's a locked thing. Look what happens. This is what's so frustrating. Look at this. Permission denied. This blog is open to invited readers only. And I couldn't figure out how to contact the guy. And that's why we never did the show until now, thanks to Aaron and the original Misfits Fiend Crypt, whatever thing. So So yeah, that stinks. Further note, you guys know how much I love the Beatles. Ringo Starr. So when the Beatles were at the height of their Beatlemania in 1964, 1965, and really 1966, the Beatles stopped touring in 1966 in part for this reason. The crowd, they would play a stadium. They do a half-hour set at Shea Stadium. Imagine being on a tiny stage in the center of this baseball field, and the whole thing is sold out. It's a wall of screaming girls. The band couldn't hear themselves play. They literally could not hear a single note. They would just play and hope for the best. The way that Paul and John and George would know what Ringo was up to was they would, turn around. Oh no, sorry, the other way around. The way that Ringo, that was my whole point of this thing. Ringo could not hear anything. Ringo is the drummer. The drummer is the backbone, the heartbeat of the band, right? The drummer is what your band is only as good as the drummer, right? The drummer is what makes everything go. And so Ringo would have to know, or what would help him keep the beat when they'd be playing Shea Stadium, he would look at the way that John Lennon was moving with his guitar, and he knew exactly where he was supposed to be in the song by how John was, shaking his neck or, doing this thing. Same thing with Paul. So he could tell when he needed to shift because he couldn't hear jack shit. Now imagine it's your first show. It's a hardcore show. The monitor probably sucks. The PA probably sucks. You have Glenn and Jerry. You have Glenn and Jerry with those crappy guitars, those jacked up guitars, and you're drunk and you haven't rehearsed. What a terrible combination. He says, it all happened so quickly. I was off the stage and just walked out the back door, pacing back and forth, pissed off. I heard Glenn asking if anyone in the audience knew how to play drums. Eventually, Todd from the Necros went up and finished the show. We all stayed in Detroit that night, and the next morning I was super apologetic, trying to explain that I stupidly did have too much to drink, but more than anything, just couldn't hear what was going on. So what Brian is trying to say, what Brian attests to from beyond the grave, yes, that didn't help either. Agreed. That didn't help either, man. They definitely did not have loud enough stuff, the Beatles. And a band like that, you think they would. So, sorry, lost my train of thought. So there you go. There you have it. As Brian states from beyond the grave in this testimony, more than anything else, he could not hear what was going on and could not play. The next morning I was super apologetic, trying to explain that I stupidly did have too much to drink, but more than anything, just couldn't hear what was going on. I felt awful. The drive back to New Jersey was a solemn trip in complete silence. When we finally got home, to add insult to injury, I realized that somehow, in the tight confines of the van, I had accidentally sat on the copy of Cough Cool during the trip and cracked it. Perfect. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my lordy, Lord. Brian stayed in New York around 10 years, joining Hellbent. Oh, we already read that. His playing has appeared on close to 50 CDs and in numerous films and TV shows, including Kingpin, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, What About Brian, Ed, Felicity, What Lies Beneath, MTV's Real World, The Skulls, Stonebrook, Life as We Know It, HBO's Real Sex, and The Hollow. BrianKeats.com. Let's see what's at his website, if it's still up. Probably not. Brian, he passed away at the age of 46 after a battle with liver cancer. Fuck cancer. Yeah, it's gone. BrianKeats.com is no more, unfortunately. Oh my God. So he also destroyed, not only did he he partially inform the Misfits breaking up, or whatever you want to call it, partially contribute, even in a slightest modicum, contribute to the Misfits breaking up, but he also broke one of 500 Cough Cools. a record that goes today. What was the highest that it recently go for? Like $20,000. Sorry, I meant to say $20,000. Hey, thank you for the thank you for watching music, film, TV. Please subscribe. Thanks. I hope you subscribe to my channel. I hope you all subscribe to my channel. And that's it from poor Brian Damage Keats. That's the end. That makes him officially cool in a very unique way. Yeah, man. I mean, listen, he played the shortest amount of time in the Misfits, but he was there for like a monumental, event involving the Misfits. And that's what matters, in terms of it's a footnote. It's a footnote in the history of this band. And this band is more than a footnote. It's a footprint in the history of punk rock. And punk rock is a branch on the rock and roll tree. So, it's all related. It's all there. Cough Cool. Thanks, Dan. Cough Cool went for 10K. And I'm glad you are subscribed to my channel. I appreciate that. So what do you guys think? What does everybody think? Where is Brian, in this sort of, it's not like he's on trial or anything, but where is Brian? Where does Brian sit in all of your eyes after what happened? Like I said, oh my God, Eric, he says, sup, what did I miss? Come on, Eric. You missed such a great show. This was a good show. I felt like I was firing on all cylinders tonight. No. What I wanted to ask is, what do you guys think? Do you think that Brian is misunderstood, or that he's just a ginormous fuck up and, deserves the ribbing that he gets, considering the situation? Because you know what? I just don't think it's as much his fault it is his fault. There's so many people to put blame on. If the only person who I wouldn't put blame on is Doyle. Really? I blame Jerry, I blame Brian, and I blame Glenn. Those are the guys who deserve the blame. And I would put the blame on, I would say in a way, I'd put a lot of blame on Glenn, in the sense that, it almost kind of, when I think about all the things that we just reviewed, and I think about it all, disillusionment, wanting to go do a new project like Samhain, in a weird kind of way, maybe Glenn unknowingly did sabotage the band a little bit. Not just in the sense of there's a lot of dysfunction with Jerry and Doyle. Those guys are not very good live. There's a lot. Glenn suffers a lot of their shenanigans. He doesn't like the current situation. Glenn is, and there's one thing you can't deny about a guy like Glenn is committed to his career. And if the Misfits, maybe he felt the Misfits were just pulling him down or pulling him in the wrong direction. And to get out from under that, it's like, hey, I'm going to start over. I'm going to start with a new band with a new fresh sound. And boy, did he take things in a direction, you got to hand it to Glenn. He did not try, the worst thing about the Misfits 95 is maybe that after a while, it's like, oh, all you got to do is just write, a song about a horror movie, pick a horror movie and then write a song about it. Which is a template that doesn't really encompass what the Misfits were really truly about. And it's a template that would be copied by every, horror punk band that would follow in the Misfits 95 footsteps, but not Samhain. It's like Samhain Glenn just kept expanding with Samhain. He went from Halloween Trick or Treat to Halloween Blood and Sacrifice. Yeah, I'm sure Glenn had his background reasons for being how he was at the time. Yeah, I'm okay with what happened. I will never speak ill of the guy. Rest in peace. Yep. Brian got a raw deal. I think we're all on the same page, you guys. Brian got a raw deal. He did. I love listening to the Glenn interviews. So many nuggets of good stuff in those. Those audio interviews from his apartment with the TV in the background, time travel almost. Yeah, that's an interview with the Pusshead, the guy who did, the eyeball coming out of the dead guy or whatever. That was Pusshead. And he had a band too. And he did such a great, that was a great interview with Glenn. Probably the most raw and honest interview we'll ever get with Glenn. So yeah, that's it. So for those of you who joined us late, just to reiterate what is going on, we have a great interview. Right. Yeah, he's the Metallica artist. That's right. He had good time getting drunk with the Necros, played 2 songs, then got fired, inadvertently nailed the coffin to the Misfits' demise. Yeah, that is pretty much what happened. Yes. Eric says, when you guys talk about how Glenn was at the time, are you referring to him hiring Brian Damage as the drummer and then not showing up to practice? I mean, yeah, that is definitely part of that. But listen, it wasn't just, we read at the beginning. When you go back to the beginning of this thing, you'll hear I really did my best to really sort of paint a picture of what led to this stuff. And really, as I said, the death nail for this whole thing, the death blow was the instability of lineups. That's what really killed the band in many ways, and amongst other things. But yeah. So I don't know, guys. I don't know what else to say. I think that we've naturally reached the end of this episode. Maybe we'll take it to 2 hours and call it a day, unless if you guys create some conversation right now. Other than that, let me see. We have some more comments. Doyle is not a great guitar player at all. He's a locker room jock playing a guitar. Boy, you're mean. Look, Doyle, I've said this 100 times. Doyle is first of all, listen to the Doyle albums, man. Just listen to the Doyle albums. Say what you want about the guy, but the dude is a musician and does know his way around a guitar. Is he the best guitar player out there? No. Is he a good rhythm guitar player? Absolutely. Fantastic rhythm guitar player. He can hold it down, I've enjoyed all of the Danzig albums. Yeah, they're great. They're definitely great. Ahale says, should I yell it since this is in caps locks? Should I yell it? I should probably yell it. I heard Doyle say he escorted Damage off stage in a Darth Vader manner. Yeah, we read that. We watched that interview. It's the Wikipedia thing on YouTube. I like caveman approach guitar players. Doyle has that down-picking brutalness. Yeah, man, that's I like the way that you phrase that. It is. He's kind of like a caveman when he plays guitar. That's exactly right. Down to the fact that he's literally punching his guitar. Do you know any other guitar players that can do that? It definitely affects the sound in some way, shape, or form, for better or for worse. I mean, whether you like the songs or not, whatever. I mean, he holds it down by himself with the Misfits 95. After you listen to the early shows from 83, 82, 83, 81, 80, whatever. And, it sounds terrible, but then when you listen to him in the 90s, I mean, he knows how to play guitar. I hate this. I hate this idea that he's not a musician or guitar player or whatever, Is he a Bobby Steele? No, Bobby Steele's a much different player. And together, both of their applications would have serviced that band in such a wonderful way. And they couldn't make it work. Yes, beats the guitar. Exactly. That's exactly what it is. Now, do you think that would they have made it to Germany? First of all, once again, let's say, I mean, it sounds like the other thing too is even if they were managed to keep it together to go do the tour in Germany, it was the fight over the drummer that seemed to put an end to everything, this resentment. So there was no way that even if Todd Swalla had worked out, I guess there was no way they were ever going to go to Germany with Todd, but they could have done it. Billy Joe imitates Doyle guitar punishing in a cover they do. I want to see that. Pod, send me a link to that. I want to see that. Let me see if I could find that. It's a Misfits cover, or is it what kind of cover is it, Pod? And says, didn't Glenn say it was the last show before they started the show? How was there a tour book? Yeah, so this is what's interesting. On one hand, Glenn says, oh, yes, it's Last Caress. So on one hand here, I'm going to search for this while we're talking. Billy Joe Armstrong, Last Caress. Let's see what comes up. Yeah, that's what's interesting. I don't know who booked this tour. I don't know if it was Glenn who booked the tour. I don't think so. It must have been Jerry booking the tour, even though it was Glenn who did the booking. I don't know. In terms of Glenn saying it was their last show, he announced it during the show. Like after they kicked off the drummer, after they kicked off Brian, he said, "This is our last show." He said, "Happy Halloween. This is our last show." But he had been considering it over the summer. So, here, I see Hybrid Moments. I don't see Last Caress, though. Well, let me see if I can find this. He says, I think it's Last Caress. Madonna covering Pantera is pretty neat, too. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Here, it's a band called The Cover-Ups. And they're doing Where Eagles Dare. I didn't realize that Billy Joe was such a Misfits fan. I guess that makes sense. But I did not see anything about Last Caress. Trying to find it. At 155. Where are you talking about? Oh, are you talking about in the Where Eagles Dare cover? Hold on, let me pull this up. We can't play the music, obviously. Well, I guess maybe we could. I'm not going to, though. Sorry. Hold on. Got to share the screen. Oh, it is Where Eagles Dare. Okay, thank you. I guess I could play Where Eagles Dare. What's the worst that's going to happen? Right? All right, let's try it. Let's play Where Eagles Dare. See what happens. Let's make sure I don't blow out my ears on this. I'm just going to lower the quality.
Oh, right on.
All right, let's see.
Song. Oh, okay, cool. Can I play guitar? The song's by the Misfits. You might want to dance to this one. Sing along. You know the words.
Man, they should have got him for the second guitar. That would have been okay. Let's go to the last show too. All right. There it is. You said it's at 155. All right, I don't need to see all this. Oh, it's almost over. Oh yeah. Look at him, he's doing it. You see that? He was trying to be Doyle. Let's rewind that. Ready? He does it right here. Right here. Right. Oh, he's like, that hurts. See, that takes talent, man. So you want to say, who was the jabroni that was saying something bad about, here, Jorge, you want to say that Doyle is not a great guitar player at all, but here's Billy Joe. Is he a great guitar player? I mean, he's a good guitar player. He's a known guitar player. He's a successful guitar player. He can't do what Doyle does. So there you go.